You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Convos podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace, you're now tuned into the Cosmic Convos podcast. I'm your humbled host, Herut, and we got the man of the hour, the good Brother Ra. How you doing?
Oh man, excellent, King, excellent. Thriving, getting stronger, getting better, despite whatever is going on. It seems actually it's been a blessing for many people that this kind of whole situation has come about. So, taking lemons and making lemonade, my friend.
Absolutely, man. Same thing here, man. Been able to get a lot of stuff done. It's actually, it came at a great time for me, to be able to, finish this film up and all that good stuff, so, just definitely rolling with the current right now.
Indeed. That's the beautiful thing about this knowledge, man. You turn a crazy, obstacle course into, something that's an adventure, so it's a beautiful thing when you have this science, no doubt.
Absolutely. So, before we get too far, I want to remind you all that this podcast is brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Caliprusia Astrology and our patrons out there on Patreon. We definitely appreciate you. I want to give you all a shout out. Kinameti, thank you for your continued support, and the brother Ijala, Unkma Ahai, and we got a new patron, Iyama Sheps. Thank you all for your support, and hit us up, and we're definitely going to have some interesting things coming up for you all real soon, so stay tuned for that. All right. Now, as far as Push It Forward Media Group, you can find us on Instagram at Push It Forward. That's PUSHITFWD. And you can find us on the web with the same spelling, same type of handle, pushitforward.com. On there, you can find this podcast, and you can also find some interviews and different things like that. And we got short films on the way. Come in on ninethlord.com for Ninth Lord Films. So go check that out. And Brother Ra, how can the people get in touch with you?
Oh, man. Facebook, IG, Shechem Ra. That's the tag on there. So either one of those definitely can get at me. And then also you can hit me up on calipurushastrology@gmail.com. So either one of those three traditionally going to get right up. It's going to tap me on the shoulder pretty quickly.
Indeed. So yeah, here we are. We're at episode 7 of season 2. Seems like we're flying through this thing, But yeah, episode 6, man, again, as usual, got a very good response. What's the feedback you've been getting on that episode?
Really interesting feedback. People realize the power of this science, the power of being able to cooperate with time, right? A lot of good comments, a lot of good responses with regards to really understanding that this science is one that, it literally is awe-inspiring. So I definitely have been pleased by the responses. And this one definitely should follow suit.
Absolutely. And to that point, we got some questions from our patrons out on Patreon. And I just want to remind you all, This is how you get to us as far as if you got questions, specific things. Come become a patron, and we'll definitely lace you and whatnot. We kind of switch the model up a little bit, but yeah, if you become a patron, we will answer pretty much any question that you ask us. And also, there's also a package that you can actually be on the show live with us. So definitely go check that out. So one of our good patrons wanted to know if the fifth house indicates adoption and stepchildren. And also they wanted to know, well, we'll go ahead and answer that one first. Go.
Sure. So the fifth house itself is always going to be used to look into, first of all, if the promise of children is there for the individual to have a legitimate child of their own. That is the first thing you want to look at. And many times the promise will not be there for people they're not due children in this life. And people say that's kind of cold or harsh, or how can you work around that? Well, sometimes it's just not designed. Life is just designed that you yourself don't have a bloodline that you physically will produce, but you will have possibly someone that you will care for that will carry on some part of you into the future. So in order to kind of see that, you want to see if the fifth house / fifth lord has a relationship with either primarily the 12th house, secondarily the 6th house, and also usually Rahu or Ketu, primarily Ketu, and sometimes Saturn as well. So if the first combination you can always notice is if the 5th house has a connection to the 12th. And a lot of times you'll notice that because the 12th house is the house of, first of all, hospitals, ashrams, right, temples, right, things like that. But in this world, right, where we don't lean towards a spiritual kind of purview, we can talk about orphanages, right, social institutions that care for the underprivileged, right. That's the 12th house, where abandonment, things that were left to the wayside, things that deal with loss, right, are really encumbered. But the thing about the 12th house is that it's not all necessarily the negative aspects. It talks about charity, right? When you adopt, right, it is an act of charity. It is an act of loss for you in some sense, in that, you may not be able to fill that void physically with someone, but you'll fill it with someone that can at least be the recipient of that same love. And so that is typically very doesn't resonate with the nature necessarily of the 5th house. So that's why we look to 8 houses away from the 5th, which is the 12th. So the 6th house also has some roles, but that's more almost family adoption, if you will. So cousins, maybe your niece or your nephew or your great cousin, you adopt them for whatever reason. And the 6th house deals with disenfranchisement, imbalances. Like the 12th house deals with jail, the 6th house deals with courts, right? Would make sense that you're awarded someone through the court, right? Has to go through the 6th house.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why the 6th and the 8th house have to have some affinity with the 5th house or the 5th lord, and sometimes Jupiter, to really kind of say, you know what, yeah, you're going to adopt. or it's a possibility that your child may not be yours blood related, or they might be yours related through you, but they may not be yours biologically, right? Fifth house connection to the sixth house and 12th house. Hope that answers the question, right?
Indeed. The second one was, what can K2 in the 8th and 12th indicate as far as past life and this life?
Excuse me. Yeah, so, you've heard me many times I've made mention to look to K2 to find what your past life is, right? Or was, or generally. And let's say this, folks, everything in the chart is your past, right? It is. That's why it's been stamped and kind of etched into you to carry that from that moment of birth to manifest and master those things in your life. But to say the planet that really does harness or hold us or kind of create that silver string, that silver cord to the past life is K2. And wherever it is, you can pretty much guarantee that in that house, meaning that area of life, you were very much heavily weighted in experiences in the past life, wherever that may be. So if it's in the first house, right, you were heavily weighted on you, right, in the past. And so you know all about you. So now this life you've come to learn about others. And specifically others, the one other that would define you the most is your mate. Right, so that's K2 in the first. Well, K2 in the 12th is a little different because there's no people that are kind of represented by the 12th. So it really represents, in the past life, you were really focused on one of a few things. One, you were focused on the need to constantly escape your problems. Two, you were constantly incarcerated or sick, right? Or constantly traveling, right? But it also can mean you were constantly focused on spirituality to a high degree. And a lot of times they'll say K2 in the 12th house indicates moksha. What is even moksha? Because moksha means liberation, but to be liberated from what?
Yeah.
Right? To be liberated, right? By whom? From what? Right? So those are kind of words that been misrepresented. Liberation just means, right, that you get the opportunity to not forget your past life when you come back to this in the next life. That's what it really, really, really means. Right? Means that you don't forget. The worst thing to do when you're trying to get something accomplished is to forget what you're trying to do in the first place. And so many of us, we get these bleeps and kind of hints. We get hints. People just don't listen. They're called omens, right? And they're hints to tell you either you're on the right path or you're on the wrong path, right? But K2 in the 12th, provided is very strong, that person automatically knows. In fact, they're usually not very involved in the world. They're usually very detached because they've already gone through the cycles of existence enough to know that, you know what, I can let it all go. But this comes in a negative price, in a negative sense in some ways, that because maybe you're not in that spiritual vein, you might be confused in this world. You may not feel settled, right? And then that opens you up to the host of illnesses that Rahu does in the 12th to say now you're going to learn to master, right, the understanding of your place in this world. You're going to learn to understand how to manage illness. That's what Rahu can do many times in the 6th and K2 in the 12th. Now K2's in the 8th. Several things can be indicated by that as well. And these are all defined by the placements, the aspects, and so forth, and other particular charts that we look at to really understand what is the past life in general, what it looks like. But Ketu in the 8th house a lot of times can indicate that in the past life, right, you had access to other people's money. Could have been that you probably, right, had access to great resources. Well, how do you figure that? Because this life, Rahu goes to the 2nd house, which wants you to amass your own wealth, not others. It also can mean that you very much were so interested into occult knowledge, or you were very much focused or harnessing your energies, experiences around uncovering or harboring secrets of others. It also can mean very much so that your energies were highly focused in sex. So very much so Ketu can indicate, right, these things, right, in whatever respective house they're in, whether it's the 12th or the 8th. If it's in the 6th house, right, these people are called Ayah. They usually can die many times of Ayah. It's always hard for me to say it. Ayah, doctors that are diseases that are self-induced. Self-treatment, because they don't like doctors. Ketu in the 12th, so Ketu in the 6th doesn't deal with doctors very much. And they actually usually stay fairly healthy. Right, so each one of these positions, and y'all come take the classes. Take the classes. If y'all want to learn to do this, provided it's in your destiny, right, you can do it. And trust me, right, I get rid of all the fluff. I get rid of all the confusing, right, statements that these different, like, ancient texts state, because they have to be clarified and they have to be run through a filter that really removes the confusion of a lot of the Hindu stigmatisms around their practices, like moksha, things like that. But bar none, come to the classes. I assure you, you will not regret it.
Indeed. So yeah, that was definitely an excellent breakdown. I hope that answers your question sufficiently or whatnot. I'm pretty sure it did, and go ahead, keep them coming, right? So today, we're gonna get into a very interesting topic, and it actually was, I guess, a good segue was, out on social media, a lot of people were talking about, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, Brother Rob, but the situation between the singer Adele and her paying like $100 and something million of alimony to her husband.
I heard about that.
Right. So, a lot of people have been, debating the topic of, should men be receiving alimony, or should, what's the role, are gender roles a real thing? Is it a social construct, or, all of those things, is kind of what people been kind of questioning about this whole situation, right? And I think that's a good segue for what we're about to talk about today, right? What you think?
Excellent segue. Excellent. We live in some very topsy-turvy times, and as a young man coming up, I always, I was born in the 70s, and so it was just plain as it could be. I just hate to say it, like, it is, things were what they were. Relationships were what they were. It just, being born at a very special time in this world, seeing so many changes come within such a short period of time is very sometimes unnerving. In the sense that it really calls on a lot of kidney energy just to understand things. Kidney energy in Chinese medicine deals with the unknown.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a lot of what this is. It seems low-grade Kennedy energy. Just a lot of out of nowhere, low-grade, confusing behavior, despite how much money you have, how much wealth you've amassed. Doesn't matter anymore. That doesn't qualify, or that doesn't prescribe morality. And morality is important in understanding marriage. The institution of marriage is a moral one. It is. It's a spiritual one.
Yeah.
It's not common. It's not for common law. It's not for commonplace. It's not to split the bills. That's a lot of people married for. We're splitting the bills, and it's just the way things are. That's just a sign that things are very much shifting, right, into a new paradigm.
People want companions just for the companionship.
Yeah, like
a partner in crime.
What happened to nation building, or what happened to community building? Your block used to be special. Like, I remember when I was a kid, man, everybody on the block could whoop me. You know what I mean? Like, the people across the street could discipline me. The lady across, it was a different day. And it was unity. It really was. And so now we have so much disunity. Don't touch my child. Don't say anything to my child, despite what your child might be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's broken down to the nth degree in regards to community.
Yeah.
And so that's where it starts. That's where we talk about men and women, right? And we're very different. We are. Our ancestors understood this, though, right? Because now, in these times, everyone's the same, right? Well, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're very different. We're very much compatible and supplemental to each other, but we're different. Men and women are different. They just are. It's designed that way. And here's the crazy, confusing thing about it. Do we question whether there's male and female birds? They don't question their integrity. The birds do just fine. Right?
Yeah.
The elephants have no problem. Right? The lions seem to be doing quite okay.
There's not to cut you off, but there's a interesting story I read years ago about the elephants, right? A lot of the adult male elephants were being like poached and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it left a lot of fatherless elephants. And the male elephants that, were missing their father, which is wild. They're the ones who are attacking people and you understand what I'm
showing
saying?
Something right there. Yeah. Because that father energy settles the home.
Yeah.
It calms the home. When your father's around, there's a different air in the house, right? But, like I said, everything else seems to be doing all right but us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't question whether the male lion is never questioned or looked at funny by the pride. Right? The pride does what it does, and he does what he does, and they're it's worked for quite a long time. Right? So this whole confusion about how the integrity of something can be, no other creature on the planet Earth does this but man.
The illusion of choice.
It is the illusion of choice, my friend. So, shout out to Raku, right, brother? If you ever listen to these podcasts, it's a good Western astrologer friend of mine. He and I go round and round, but he's an exception to the rule when I say Western astrologer, because, of course, he dabbles in the sidereal, but he just knows math very well, and he knows the geometry of the planets very well, which, once you know that, you can kind of see certain things from any system. But nonetheless, because we were talking about, that whole debate of choice, right? Whether or not there's something inherent, if we have choice or whatnot. But not to digress, when we understand ancient systems and ancient societies, ancient systems of living is what I'm saying, there's no confusion. And when you have a society that demeans, right, demotes, abuses, ridicules, shows no appreciation for the female side of creation, for the female side of themselves, for the woman aspect of the divine, then you have a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. So something's always going to fill it.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And what's being filled with is the imbalance of the masculine and divine, feminine energy. So when you have an imbalance, something is seeking that balance, to bring some balance back as far as the feminine side of the divine is concerned. So what that looks like in a traditional society is that women have a very specific power and authority in society, and is not undermined, or neither is it reduced in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Women in traditional African societies, West African societies, they run the market.
Yeah.
Right? Their power is in trade. Think about if the trade franchises of America, if the stock market, right, was run by women, you wouldn't necessarily have this need to emasculate themselves, to put themselves into positions where they may not necessarily be designed to handle. Now, yes, there's always exceptions to the rule. Don't get me wrong. There's not a blanket statement you're going to catch me make. I'm no silly, I'm no fool, right? In fact, in Star Wars, and I'm a Star Wars fan, I love Star Wars, right?
Oh, yeah.
In Star Wars, they say, right, only a Sith thinks in absolutes, right? So there is no such thing as absolute. Hot is always relative to cold,
Yeah.
Right? Up is always relative to down, right? So man is always relative to what? Woman. This is just the nature of the universe. The nature of the universe, even down to the coarest, barest of its particles, is male and female, electron, proton. And they say, well, what about the neutron? The neutron is neutral.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything, right? So you have both, right? And they both play a very specific role in the charging of an atom, and from that charging of an atom all the way up to the macrocosmic aspect of what we call male and female. It's the same thing repeated on itself over and over. That's why even plants are male and female.
Yeah.
So, knowing that male and female is the norm basis of the universe, we don't have to question, right, whether or not a chart is going to reveal the same basis, right?
Yeah.
And so we're not going to talk about the male side. We're going to talk about that side that has been ignored and been overly subdued, the female side.
Yeah.
So in traditional societies, right, you have rites of passage. And rites of passage are designed to stage out man's development in a proper time frame based on his natural, biological, emotional, and spiritual, right, development. Remember, we talked about this in the last show, that there is a natural order, or not the last show, but the previous to the last show, there is a natural psychological development to man. Well, guess what? When you hit your first Saturn return, you have a rites of passage. That's how it's done. That's why we did it that way.
Yeah.
So when you have your first, and it's kind of inculcated into society, in this society, because man's urges, as me and my brother both know, we have 11 primal urges, but one of those urges is the need to grow.
Yeah.
The need to move beyond your current status. And that urge is facilitated in many ways, but one of the ways in the inner cities is facilitated is gangs.
Yeah.
It's the same urge, just being fulfilled by a lower left brain.
Yep.
Right? So understanding that, in the suburbs, they call it boys and girls, the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
Right? In the Latina community, they call it a quinceañera.
Yeah.
Right? In the Jewish community, they call it a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
All the same urge, trying to seek to delineate and align that integrity in that role that you're supposed to perform as a young adult in society, where the woman is instructed that this is the thing that you do, and the integrity is upheld, and she's given honor, and she has pride in being a woman. That's what the astrology is intended to read, not this society's dimensions. But we can adjust, because we do understand that the astrology will also facilitate those societies that are not leaning towards the proper unfoldment of man's spiritual nature in time. So when we look at a chart, right, the first thing we want to see, because we are primarily in the West, in a Western mindset, no ancient Commission, African traditional stuff is not Western. It is truly Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
But because we live in the West, because the traditional processes of rites of passage of spiritual development for man is not instituted, we have to look at the chart just slightly different to get the same message. And so we don't use the traditional kind of prescription to see the same thing we would in a chart for an American woman or a Brazilian woman or whatever you want to call a Western woman versus someone from the East, because their purview and mindset is going to be different, even though they're being westernized as well, folks. I don't want to make it paint the picture that the East is still some spiritualized kind of meditative society. No, they just have so much of it left over. It still kind of lingers there, and they still have the access to tap into it. But very much so, they are being westernized. In India, in Africa, in most societies that have a link to something ancient, it is fading quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But knowing that it has been there, knowing that it is the root of the Eastern cultures, knowing that astrology is from that root, when we look at it, it's going to tell us, well, you don't look to that to look for a woman's, to understand a woman's chart. You look to the Western mindset, and Mars, right, is the first planet as an astrologer I look at to understand a woman and how she is to be revealed to herself through astrology. So remember, in the natural order of things, Aries is considered, right, the first sign, and Libra is the seventh. Libra being ruled by Venus, the natural feminine, and Aries being ruled by Mars, the natural masculine. So looking from a woman's point of view, from across from herself, Mars is the seventh away.
Yeah.
So Mars being the seventh away from Libra, meaning the seventh for the woman. Then we look for Mars, and typically, especially this society, to find out the nature of which, what is the missing piece of male energy that she needs to complete herself to make her whole, as far as that masculine part that she needs to harness in herself. It's still there in her, But what you'll find is that because that women have a higher estrogen output because they're supposed to. They have an estrogen integrity that has to be kept. If not, we begin to grow hair on our faces in different places because of excess testosterone where it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I know there's the question: does it happen to men? Absolutely. Men can grow breasts, right, and different things, right? But nonetheless, right, women have a estrogen integrity level they have to keep, and testosterone too, because we all have both of them in us, but women have more estrogen, and rightfully so, right? So understanding that Mars is that testosterone, right, and wherever Mars is placed, you look for that to find what the woman will seek to complete herself, what women seek to find the needed, necessary, masculine, testosterone-based product in their life. What is going to produce that in my life? Let me find that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so women will attract the Mars in her chart. Right? She's literally saying, hey, sending signals that this is something I need. So, like, people say, well, what does that mean? So, for example, like a woman with Mars in Virgo, many times will find that they like a man that is well kept, very much metrosexual, if you will. Clean, particular, right? Articulate, the whole, whatever you could imagine, right? That refined masculinity to be.
Yeah.
And because society prescribes many times something outside of that, and women will lean sometimes, not all, because men do too. We all lean to what we think we want, right? But when you sit down with a competent astrologer and he says, no, this is what you really want, they're like, yeah, you're right. Don't worry about what society has to say. What do you really want? Oh, yeah, I really do want that kind of guy.
Yeah, that was
Mars.
That was going to be my question. Because, you know, do you think that they're always conscious of that thing that the chart is indicating? Is it, you know, would you look at it more from the perspective of what they want or what they're going to get?
Usually society tells them what they want.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm talking about the placement.
The placement will tell them what they need. And what they want in essence, right? But usually both. Because usually when you get the thing that completes you, it's like I kind of get everything I need. I get what I need. It's a strange thing, right? Because the chart is so specific, destiny is so specific. There is someone there waiting specifically to fulfill that, provided that destiny affords that.
Yeah.
Right. That person's there. You just have to, space and time has to unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But there's a program. See, when you become divine, you can be with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can change. You have all of those things at will. Right. But when you're not there yet, then we try to fill those voids in, or try to mask or kind of mirror ourselves with the other side of us. Really, and that's how the divine kind of teaches us the lessons, is that, you know, it's a carrot trick. You think you're getting this, but it's really this. Especially if you're not competent in astrology, because you're getting something called the representative. Everyone meets the representative at first. Everybody.
Yeah.
Right. You don't meet the royal person until about 3.5, 4 years in. That's when you meet them. And then in 7 years, you're like, oh, hi. Oh, no, that's who you are. Oh, okay. Got it. Right. Because the person most people don't even know themselves.
Yeah.
Let alone you know them. Right. So Mars is the primary planet. Mars in Gemini. right? Woman will like a man that will talk. Has a lot of man that will have fun. Oh, a man that gotta have Mars and Gemini. Women love a man that will take them and take them different places, experience different things, travel. Right, because she needs that martial energy to do that for her, because she doesn't necessarily have all of it there that she wants to have. So she has to have someone that matches that in a way that brings that level of completion. And then she like that, and then they'll say, "That's the one." Or you'll hear them, "Girl, he's the one." Then you pop the chart. Oh, well, yeah, it makes sense why you would say he's the one. And even if he's the one, there's still something comes with. See, most people don't get it. Like, even with the one, stuff comes with the one too.
Yeah.
Because they have a chart. They have a destiny. So, Mars is the planet. Mars, right, in the 4th house, for a woman, is much different than a Mars in the 4th house for a man. Mars in the 4th house for a woman, number one, she's emulating her mother in the way she runs her home as a general or as a commander.
Yeah.
See, for the Mars, for the father, for the man, his mama's like that, because it's 4th house, right? So his level of satisfaction is going to be different, even though generally they can be read the same. The woman is going to emulate the mother, so she's going to be more adamant in the home than he will, with Mars in the 4th. See, Mars in the 10th for a man, no joke. He's no joke. Because he's at that level where he himself has to be seen as this. Whereas Mars in the 4th says, no, I know myself as this, right? But I'm going to live it out in the inner planes versus... and it still will be externalized because Mars in the 4th still looks at the 10th. So it will be externalized, but it'll be more education focused with Mars in the 4th for a man. Right? More protecting the mother, right? Protecting the home, right? But not necessarily externalized to come out and conquer the world.
Would you say he would want to delegate that like have a vision, but let it be carried out by the woman? Mars in the 4th.
Depends on her chart too.
Yeah. I mean, or that would be his, or would that be his desire rather?
Mars in the 4th, no.
Okay.
No, because we need to look for Venus for him. Right. See, Mars is him. See, Mars in the man's chart is the man.
Yeah.
Himself. Right. So he's in the home. He's very protective. Fiercely so. Right. Fierce educator. Make sure that the child gets education in the home.
Yeah.
We'll fight for it. Being in the port. So this is Mars in the 4th. They had the PTA meetings.
Yeah.
Fighting. Like, what's so serious? This is my child's life. Like, oh wait. You're like, Mars in the 4th, very protective of home.
Yeah.
Right? Mars in the 10th, you deal with that. You go to the PTA meetings. I'm out here taking heads. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, for a man though.
Yeah.
Right? For a woman, right? And this is where we call what's called Mangala Dosh. Right? Mars in the 4th. Mars in the 7th. Mars in the 8th. Mars in the 12th. Right? Called Mangal Dosh. Right? And it's an affliction for Mars. So, a lot of times you'll find that Mars in these placements, the woman is very adamant. I'm not. You can leave. Bye. What? Well, what happened to love? I love you, but then I don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then to reinforce that with the societal craziness of Keisha Cole and I'm not a big music guy, but you get the drift, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever else you sing it, right? Whatever. It's so crazy now. Like every 5 minutes is a new singer or something. But
yeah,
back in my day, it was Nita Baker's and the Beyoncé's, I guess, or whatever. These reinforce those confusing Western paradigm thoughts that I don't need a man, girl. I don't need you. And men do. I don't need a woman. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You do need each other. You're born to need each other. You're born designed to be with the opposite sex. Unless you have another purpose, which the chart will reveal. But Mars always shows for a woman the type of man she typically will attract. Mars in Pisces, right? So a lot of times these women get men that are kind of everywhere. Wanderers, happy-go-lucky type guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in drugs, maybe been incarcerated, maybe can't get their life right, maybe, right? Because they are there to vicariously save. Pisces likes to save things. So when a woman has that, she's always fixing a man.
Yeah. What about Aries?
No, she will attract. She likes the warrior.
Yeah.
She wants that man's man. Right? She wants a man to walk in and take the room. Right? The warrior, the leader, the boss. Right? That's what she attracts.
Mm-hmm.
But then she herself is athletic. Right? She herself finds that she has a drive and ambition that can't be easily quenched.
Mm-hmm.
So she would have to have a running mate to do that. Things go hand in hand. Right? But let's talk about that moon, right? Now, one last tidbit about Mars, right? Retrograde, folks. Anytime you see Mars retrograde in a chart, about 40 to 50% of the time, unless it's conjunct Mars, it's conjunct Venus, aspects Venus in a Venusian sign, or has some interrelation with Venus, a lot of times it can create rigidity in the feminine aspect of things, because Mars now has been internalized. And Mars is the sexual energy of a woman as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that Mars being now internalized, regardless of the sign, if it's retrograde, many times women can be frigid. Frigidity. Right? Indifferent. Sex next week. Make love to me next year. Talk to me. Talk to me for what? Because Mars is now internalized. And remember, menstrual blood is red. It's Mars, Martial. Right. I mean, Mars is so important that I used it to predict my stepdaughter's first menstrual cycle. To the day.
Yeah.
I got a phone call. I'm out, right? Handling business. I get a phone call. Oh my God. I'm like, what's going on? You did it. You predicted the exact date she started. I was like, I told you. It's like, how did you do that? Because the proximity of Mars and the moon in the fourth. That's when you know when a girl will start her menses. When those things are in certain proximities. And she's a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it shocked me.
That's deep.
Because, my prediction is pretty good. But I was like, wow. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So, that's how important Mars is for a woman. It even times the start of the menstruals in conjunction with the moon. So, right, Mars being that planet that we know you can look to in a chart that will not only, one, show the woman's level of masculine integrity in her own being, meaning that can she control her own temper? right? Can she focus her energies? Many times Mars in Cancer, when it's debilitated, their energies are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
For a woman especially.
Yeah.
Can't focus. Got so many things going, right? And they get nothing done because remember, it's a cardinal sign with a Marshall effect. You want to move, but you're moving everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it's water, which then now Cancer grows anything in its midst, right? And so it's too much. So the next planet we look to is Moon. Is the Moon. And so the Moon is the planet that is what we can look to find how she is in the sense of what she brings from the divine, right? What she reflects of her own nature. See, the moon is crucial for all of us. It's a planet. See, all the planets are crucial for all of us, but they do different things for different sides of us. The male side, it does something a little different than the female side, even though they have some similarities. There's also differences. The moon for a woman is her planet, the planet for her, because it represents her feminine energy. It represents her reproductive system. It represents her ability to nourish and nurture. See, this is a natural feminine thing. So the moon being that shows, bar none, how that woman is, and not only that, how her mother is and how her mother's mother is. Usually the moon for a woman shows 3 generations back in her chart. So knowing that, right, it's so crucial for that moon to have the proper setting, and that also helps to create that feminine type of flow. Right. See, there's always exceptions to the rule. You can have martial dispositions in your spirit, but provided you're doing it in a way that is conducive to the heat integrity of your body, not to burn you out.
Yeah.
Men can sustain heat longer than the woman can. We can endure physical pain and the sense of stress in a different way than women can. Women endure stress and pain in a different way too, but naturally so. It's to be balanced for the functions of each one of those beings. So the moon, when you see the moon and you see it strong in a chart, that woman's sense of character and who she is very hard to shake. She knows who she is as a woman. You see it. She walks it. She talks it. It's the essence of who she is. And then there are times when that integrity is compromised and she becomes cold, indifferent, masculinized. Usually will have female organ problems too.
Mm-hmm.
The moon is what shows this. Breast problems, hormonal issues, all the moon. Right? So we look for that moon to find out if is there a flow? Is the essence there? Is there a reciprocity between the inner reflection and what's going on in the outer, meaning that she takes in things properly? That's the moon. See, the sun is for the man. You want to see the man's integrity? If he's a man, look to the sun. Look to Mars. For him. See who he is. But also, in a man's chart, you look to Venus to find out the thing that he's missing in his estrogen integrity role, or what he needs to fulfill that estrogen feminine side of himself is Venus. Right. So for the moon for a woman, the planet to look for, because that will then show you exactly who she is. Right? Now, if it's conjunct Mars, aspected by Saturn, right? Good strong possibility that the childhood was one that was devoid of affection, which is what mostly that moon needs. It was starved in some way, and so that starvation creates a diminishment of hormonal output, which then changes the whole overall facial structure, bone structure, organ integrity. It's a domino effect. And so that moon is crucial. And there are things that we can do spiritually to strengthen the moon, to really call in that feminine energy, to uplift and to uphold that part of not only the male, but the female, I mean, as far as the woman, but the male as well. You know, we need that sometimes too. Sometimes when you see the male damage in the male's, the one moon damage in the male chart, he didn't get that love. So now he seeks a woman that literally abuses him. So you have to really understand, like, that moon is so important in a chart. It's the beginning of life. And for a woman, she is life. So the moon has to be studied thoroughly, and it has to be analyzed in depth so that we can use the proper remedies in case it is challenged, so that that integrity can be restored, or at least returned to some degree. Now, the next thing we do in a chart is then we do look to Venus. But Venus for a woman is not marriage necessarily. It is, in the general sense of the word, yes. But for a woman, it's how she loves. See, Mars is how the man loves, is how he protects. But the woman is, Venus is how she loves. It's how she loves, how she cares for her own femininity is Venus. You know, see, the mother doesn't. Have you ever know, like the mom? She don't care for her own looks at all.
Mm-hmm.
She can walk around with rollers, right? Have a house coat on. As long as the babies is getting taken care of, I don't care. See, Venus, that's not it. Venus is a woman's beauty, right?
Yeah.
And so if she thinks of herself as beautiful, as attractive, as wanted, as alluring, as that's all Venus. You want to see that? Look to Venus in a woman's chart, because it's going to say this is how she herself beautifies herself. So see, those three planets, Mars, Moon, and Venus, are the telltales of a woman in her inner world. Right. Now, inside of that, right, we look at the fourth from the moon. We look at fourth from the ascendant, and we also look at the fourth from Venus to understand a woman's inner heart as well, the core of who she is. Because these are all specifics to understand if that satiation can be there in a relationship. Many times, if a malefic planet is in that position of four from either one of those positions, then a lot of times it's very hard to please that person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, I know a lot of you out there listen to the podcast, you do study astrology, and you didn't hear me mention Jupiter. And there's a reason why. Jupiter, first of all, we live in the, as I keep saying, we live in the West, right? And so the West is overburdened and overridden by a bombardment of sexual energies.
Yeah.
And so Mars being that, right? It's easier to read, right? In regards to understanding the outcome of a person's chart / destiny / kind of what it is that they're going to get out of a relationship. Because Jupiter is spirituality, right? In this world, it's the church, right? But because the church is such a failed institution, and I'm sorry, folks, it is. It's such a failed institution. That's why the divorce rate is what it is. Because it doesn't properly arm the couple to endure life's challenges and the challenges that come with being with someone else.
Yeah.
So Jupiter still doesn't apply. Sorry. When I say Jupiter, I mean counsel, wise counsel. Right? When I say Jupiter, I'm talking about elderhood, a council of elders. When I talk about Jupiter, I'm talking about a real live spiritual guide that can instruct and give you things to do to mitigate the issues. I'm talking about an oracle that you consult in the community before you even get married. I'm talking about a great big mama that knows everybody and that knew y'all don't need to be together. You know what I mean? Like that kind of Jupiter, the real one.
Yeah.
Right. That's rare in this society. And so since it's not a guiding principle, right? That's not the go-to to look for to find the woman's husband in her chart. But it does provide a very profound role in understanding what a woman could use or lean towards if she has a spiritual demeanor or character.
Yeah.
And so if she's spiritualized, you're going to see Jupiter very prominent. But Jupiter, what it does is it sublimates a woman's sexual energy. Not very many women want to be sublimated sexually. Right? Because Jupiter diverts that energy into other areas.
Yeah.
Go meditate. Go study your reading for the month. Right? Comment on, what it is that you need to work on for this year. What's that? A nice, healthy, hearty salad with vegan salad dressing and water. Right? All help deliver flow, which deliver is governed by Jupiter. And Jupiter is the organ for a woman as far as her health is concerned. But how many women are having their wombs removed, right? Because of an improper life that we live here in the West. Fibroid tumors, cysts, right? This is indicative of the condition of the liver, because cyst is nothing but a tumor, a growth. And so when the Jupiter energy in a woman and in society has been compromised, these things will plague the society en masse.
Yeah.
So we don't look to Jupiter as a primary determinative to understand the woman and where it is that she's headed in relationships. We use it as a secondary, modifying, adjusting, refining, or kind of directive inside of the context of what the other planets say. Right? Because you're not going to find very many Jupiter integrity-based men in society here anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it goes hand in hand. Now, how I use it, I look at the relationship between Mars and Jupiter in a chart. If I find that Jupiter and Mars are in a very strong trinal or opposition or in a specific relationship where they have a strong, healthy integrity, I know then she will be attracted to a spiritual mate, especially if Jupiter has a strong influence on the moon. Then I can use Jupiter because I can say you want a spiritual mate. Then it works. But you talk about that with Keisha and them. No. Keisha and them not looking for that. Right? Where the money at? Right? You got a package. Right? You got a package, you got some money. Right? That's all they care about a lot of times. Right? Not all. I'm not going to say all. Because I'm talking about the common, right, status quo type individual. Right? They're not looking for the Jupiter type man. Right? No knowledge. You kicking knowledge? I don't know that knowledge. You eat right. Anyway, take me to McDonald's. I'm just playing. I mean, seriously though, they're out there. Right? Probably far more than the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why we use Mars first. That's why we use, right? Now we use the sun too to find the integrity of a man for a woman. And that's a different story because it's a way we use it to find that type of man. But there's layers to this. But for the most part, right, the Mars, that placement, the moon, and Jupiter as the fill-in for how she takes care of herself. Right? Because moon, remember, nurtures others. Venus nurtures yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Now, little few other things to kind of note, right? One thing that we do use that really works well is called the Trimshamsha. And the Trimshamsha, which is a harmonic of it's the D called a D30, right? There are different charts that we use to kind of extract different levels of meaning inside of a person's being / spirit / subconscious, whatever you want to call it, right? And so the Trimshamsha takes each degree and makes it into a sign, right? So each degree becomes a sign. So the first degree is Aries, second degree is Taurus, third degree, right? In each sign. So that means that what that one degree is, the next degree will be something different if a planet is placed there, and then the next degree something different will be placed. So every degree has a different specific meaning / placement.
Yeah.
Well, the Trimshamsha is used primarily to see kind of the upheavals and challenges that are inherent in your life and what you do to bring those things to yourself. Right? So if Saturn is primarily affected in Trimshamsha's ascendant or first house, right? That person undoes themselves because of a lack, right, of integrity, a lack of patience, a lack of planning, a lack of endurance, right, a lack of fortitude. That's going to be their self-undoing. Or they could be too rigid, too cold, too methodical, too oriented around plans, too oriented around restrictions, and too oriented around self-denial. That can also be the self-undoing if Saturn is prominent in the Trimshamsha. But the Trimshamsha is also used to gauge the moral character of a woman. And so you look now and include Jupiter in there to find the disposition of her morality. Right? And I'm not going to get into what that means in the specific sense, but in the general sense, let's just say that Trimshamsha will show me if you can uphold your end of the bargain in the female integrity side of things. If Jupiter is damaged, she will not listen to you. Because you are the thing, the one that is more or less the go-to for all intents and purposes. Honey, I need this fixed. Honey, does this look good on me? Honey, does it sound right? Honey, does it taste good? Everything is run by you. And so if that Jupiter is damaged in the Trimshamsha, if the moon is damaged, then many times this is a woman that will be challenged in the areas of keeping an integral role in relationships.
Yeah.
Mars not so much so in the Trimshamsha, but even so, if Mars is in the ascendant in the Trimshamsha, this person will have an angry disposition and sex will be a primary issue. Venus can be secondarily, but not so much so.
Sex in regards to, in what vantage point?
Sex in the sense of excess.
Okay.
In the sense of perverse. In the sense of unnatural. In the sense of overabundance. In the sense of, you get it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because Mars is men, and they're going to like men to the sense of undoing themselves. Goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Right. So, we always, of course, look to the natural houses for relationships. The 7th house, the 7th Lord, the 7th from the moon, right? The 7th from Venus. We always see these placements, of course, to see the natural progression of a relationship and if that related person is there to experience those things in the first place. As those are the telltales if the marriage can last and how long and so forth. Right? But the type of person you're going to attract, what you're going to attract is also read through these other planets because it's going to be a reflection of yourself in the first place. Male and female both. But today's show is primarily focused on the feminine side so that women really can go and begin to understand themselves in an astrological sense and begin to carve and create that masculine, feminine integrity in their lives, internally and externally.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll leave this at today's show. We'll get into some other stuff later on, but for the most part, I wanted to kind of shed some light on the fact that charts are not read the same for males and females. Even in the ascendant sense of the word, when we talk about ascendants, the ascendants are read differently for, say, for example, Shitra. Shitra is not the same for male and female. Shitra males don't marry well. Shitra females usually do.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Even that has some. So everything in astrology, in this astrology, in the Eastern astrology, you think it has some gender integrity there already. The West, everybody's the same. So Mars is Mars is Mars is Mars.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see it though. I mean, like, I know we were having this conversation. I think maybe last week or something like that, and certain energies that people would align with, maybe being enterprising or business oriented and different things. Sometimes when you see prominent placements in a woman's chart in those particular signs or what those, plans that bring that, you don't necessarily see it manifest quite that way, as you would see it in a man's chart, or, right. It's just look different. Leo looks different on a woman than a man.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's design. It's different. It's different. We're different, right? Right. The J's look good on you, but they look good on me too. You know what I mean? Like, you look good in a suit, but, right? Now, gender integrity, folks, right? I mean, it's not common these days, but I'll probably get beat up. Me Too's probably be waiting outside.
Well,
but
it's at the end of the day, we all know it. It's not. There is a such thing as chauvinism, right? It is a thing, but that's not chauvinism, right? Diminishing. Right. Chauvinism is you're diminishing, a woman's role in society and capabilities,
So, I'm uplifting it. I'm there to support it. I'm there to honor it. I'm there to say, you know what? Yeah, you should get off 7 days because you're on your cycle.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something, that there's something inherent in society that says, you know what? This is your moon time. So you take that day off, right? Or days off, and you rest.
Yeah.
How many healthy wombs so that we can make healthy babies would we have if this was inculcated into the workforce, into society, into the schools, into the rhythm of life?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you'd have a healthier society. Right?
Yeah.
I'm for that, right? A woman wants to have a baby, she should be paid her same year's salary for that period of time, up to 3 years, to be able to support a healthy child and get child a healthy beginning, not just some maternal leave, right? Where you get 8 weeks and then now you're back and your womb hasn't even pulled all the way back into this natural level because the baby pulls it back because of the breastfeeding.
Yeah.
I know they try, we have breastfeeding stations and all that. Yeah. She shouldn't even be at work.
Yeah. And that, that's part of that. I think that's what drives it. And it's at its root, that's what's driving it, right? Because society doesn't value things that females bring, so the women may translate that as, okay, we need to be more like the men.
Right.
In order to get that respect.
Right. And the crazy part about it is that you're still seen as it's an illusion to me, right? And they say, what's a glass ceiling for women? And it is. I agree. It is.
Yeah.
In this country, because you've had women prime ministers all over the world.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. Right?
Germany.
Yeah.
India
had them in the 80s. Right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing new. So we are beyond that. The world, I'm saying. Maybe not in America, but the world is well beyond that.
Yeah.
So, in understanding how things work, a woman can do the same things in as far as the functional jobs of a man in the general sense, but when these other things kick in, the society should be there to support the integrity of the femininity so that she makes better decisions in a man's world, in a man's competitive area.
Yeah.
Because then she can outshine him. Then she knows I'm well rested. I know my whole menstrual cycle was when I renewed my stuff. Right? I come out on the better end of things. Right? Instead of tired, frustrated, feeling underappreciated, feeling overused, right? Yeah, I'm all for gender integrity. You know what I mean? Because it's going to make me better. Right?
Yeah.
So I leave it at that. You know what I mean? If people have their comments, or I'm sure they will, please, drop us a line. Let us know. we're all ears. We're not here to push anything. We're here just to reveal things that should be quite obvious.
Indeed. So, with that being said, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group, Calipurusha Astrology, and our great patrons over at Patreon. Don't forget to go, sign up and, show us some love. And, we'll show some love back indeed. And again, remember to follow us at Cosmic Convo on Instagram. And we're at Cosmic Convos Podcast on Facebook as well. All right. So, we'll go ahead and put a pin in that. And we thank you all for listening. And we'll be back next week. Peace.
Peace.